I'm M23. My sister is F28, married to M30 for 6 years. My sister has been trying for a baby for about 3 years now, without success. 18 months ago she and her husband came to my parents and asked if we'd finance an IVF treatment. My parents had some savings separate from retirement and agreed to pay for it, and I even pitched in a few $100s to show my support, even though I didn't have a lot of savings, having just started work after graduation. Unfortunately, the IVF failed. Yesterday, my sister and Bill came over again for dinner. Afterwards my sister said she wanted to try another round of IVF and asked my parents if they would pay for it again. I could tell my parents looked hesitant, but they agreed because my sister was crying. At this point I stood up and said it's not right for her to ask again for our parents' money for something that didn't work before and may not work again. We argued a bit and I admit that things got heated and we had a big fight. She yelled at me that it was none of my business. I told her if she can't pay for the IVF then she needs to accept that she can't afford a kid. She told me to get out, but I refused. My parents were trying to calm us down. My mom started telling me that it's not my money, to which I replied that it's basically a gift to one child and not the other, and that it was only fair that I be given a similar amount of money as what they would spend on my sister. My sister started complaining that it's not a gift, it's the treatment for a medical condition, and if I'd expect payment if she had cancer and my parents paid for chemo. I told her not being able to have a kid poses no threat to her life the way cancer does, and it's a completely disingenuous comparison. My dad finally stood up and yelled at us both to shut up and sit down. Then he told my sister that they already paid for one, and I had a point that continuing to pay for it would be unfair. He said he's very sorry for what she's going through, but they need to accept things how they are. My sister started crying again and her husband, who had been quiet and looking uncomfortable the whole time, took her and left. Today my sister sent me some texts calling me an asshole for sticking my nose in her business and keeping her from having a baby. ATA? NTA. I get that infertility is hard, but comparing IVF to chemo? They haven't even saved up for a round themselves. They're using mom and dad as an ATM. Op made some really good points, if not cruel. NTA. The way you said it was harsh, bordering on asshole territory, but your parents were about to just hand over tens of thousands of dollars that they probably need for their retirement years because your sister was crying. Your sister is only 28. There's time for her and her husband to save the money to have IVF again in a few years. Or they can ask other family or friends to chip in. But you did the right thing to help safeguard your parents' retirement needs. Yes. Why don't they hit up Hub's family? And since Op chipped in the first round, I feel it is his business. He contributed to essentially a business transaction that failed. He hasn't even asked his C's for that money back. I get they want a child of their own. She wants the whole pregnancy experience, but maybe they should consider adopting. Not being able to afford IVF doesn't necessarily mean someone can't afford a kid, but your sister sounds extremely entitled and almost panicked. So perhaps you're right. She sounds vaguely manipulative too, saying vague because God knows what you can tell from a Reddit thread. Thus NTA from me. Maybe you didn't bring this up / handle it in a perfect way, but I'm glad you stepped in on behalf of your parents. They probably would never have been able to say no, and, honestly, IVF is expensive AF. Yeah. It sucks Op's sister can't achieve her dream, but expecting the parents to keep funding the efforts is wrong. Retirement may be more expensive than they are planning for also. While I agree that your parents aren't obligated to keep paying for treatments, I think it for your attitude. Your focus wasn't / let's be fair to mom and dad, it was / but what about *me*? It's not about you. Exactly. The outrage from Op had nothing to do with being concerned about the parents' finances. They just wanted to make sure they would get their cut too. It was jealousy and pettiness, nothing more. Except for your parents, Bill. You suck for thinking that you're owed the same amount of money in a form of a gift and trying to tell your parents what they can and can't do with their own money. Your sister sucks for trying to get more money out of them despite the treatment failing. Eat her. Thank you for the awards. IVF failing the first time isn't exactly uncommon though. A lot of people go through more than one round before they get pregnant. It's kind of tough to judge how much of an ass she is for asking cause we don't know what their fertility issues are or how long they've been trying. I don't think she'd be the ass for asking if they have exhausted other options. She would be an ass to expect money from her parents, but it's not clear that's what happened here. Just that she was emotional and she was angry and opt for interjecting. It's a little disingenuous to argue that if she deserves $sign for an IVF, you deserve the same amount of $sign for, but I do agree with your larger overall point that kids are insanely expensive, and if the 15-20k is a barrier, then what the hell are they going to do when they actually have the kid? NTA. Who says they're in the States? Giving birth in Canada, even a complicated birth, will cost you nothing more than parking and a Timmy Ho's double from the cafeteria. As a Canadian who just paid for IVF, at no point in the next 5 years will I have to pay a lump sum payment of $20,000 when it comes to my hopeful children. NTA. Where is the Bills family in all of this? I'm not completely sure. They are not on good terms with him. How is no one commenting on the fact that you used back quote she and her husband came to my parents and asked if we'd finance an IVF treatment so I see you also think you're entitled to your parents' money then? This and the part about how he thinks that they should spend that same amount on him also irk me the wrong way. Info. Why can't they now ask her husband's parents? Seems fair that way. I'm going to go with Ash, but you Marizo than your sister. It is your parents' money, that's true. And it's up to them to decide how to spend it, not you. Frankly, it's not your business. Not to mention people who can't afford IVF definitely can afford kids. There are plenty of people who can take care of their kids, but can't drop 15k in one go. Equating the two is kinda ridiculous. Likewise, you are by no means entitled to your parents' money either. It's basically a gift and it's only fair I get the same amount. Absolutely not. You are not a child. You do not have to be one-to-one to your sister all the time to prove mommy and daddy love you. That's ridiculous. How are you supposedly any better than your sister if you're demanding money for fairness? For me, this is what makes it a niche situation. 100% agreed. I noticed you used the word we initially when your sister went to your parents first to ask for money. Frankly, it's because this was none of your business, no one asked you anything, and you seem to be more interested in scorekeeping, and are using your parents as an excuse. Your dad handled your sister, it wasn't your place to. I noticed the we too, and am surprised more people haven't commented on it. Op didn't even give the parents a chance to say no before he came at her. If she had freaked out at the parents for saying no, then Op would be in the right to step in. But as it is, she only started melting down after Op butted in cruel manner. For all we know, she would have accepted no as an answer if it came from their parents without all the attacks from Opus. Or if he really wanted to reply before his parents did, he could have picked a less cruel way to do it. I don't understand all the people saying sometimes you have to be cruel to get the point across. Info. Completely unhelpful question but just curious. How much is IVF? Depends on location, but it's usually in the 5-figure range for just one treatment. Lowest I've seen people say is $12,000 US. You sound like hell to be around. As soon as you said asked if we'd finance, she asked your parents, not you. Parents don't have to give equal gifts to their kids. She has every right to ask, and your parents have every right to say no. But what does that have to do with you? My Eater, do you live at home with your parents? Do you split the bills? Do they pay your sister's bills? Do you buy your own groceries? But not because you're wrong to have your own feelings about the situation. I think the way you went about this is what makes you an R. Fertility issues are devastating, and yet you made this situation harder, and then demanded money for yourself. I can even justify questioning their financial ability to parent, but to attack her when there is a huge difference in paying the cost of IVF in one payment vs the cost of having a child that goes over a long period of time. In your comments below you continue to push this issue that you should get a similar financial gift, and that is really what solidified you as the R in my eyes. No, you are not entitled to your parents' money. You are not entitled to tell them how to spend it. You are not entitled to demand equal gifts. People seem to be getting lost in the fact that they don't agree with IVF, or there are kids that need adoption, or the expense of IVF in general. What happened here was you butted into something that didn't concern you. You didn't do it from a place of caring. You aren't worried about your parents' stability. You're jealous she's getting money you think you could have had access to. That's what makes it a spot on. Opus. Not your money, not your body, not your kid or potential kid, therefore not your business. Your parents are completely capable of deciding how they want to spend their money. They don't need you throwing a tantrum about it like a 5-year-old. Your sister is allowed to ask for the money. They are allowed to say yes or no without your Winnie *** getting involved. Are your parents so elderly they can't make their own decisions? Is it time to put them in a home? No? Then it's none of your business what they do with their money. You are barely out of adolescence. You know nothing about what your sister and her husband are going through and show a stunning lack of empathy. In fact, narcissistic levels of selfishness. You say they came to us for money. Sounds like you're an adult still living at home off your parents, and that you're only interested in them being able to preserve their money to spend on you. Frankly, their decision about how to use their money has nothing to do with you. You can choose not to contribute your nominal support anymore. But to make claims of fairness about your parents' use of their money with regards to you is the mentality of a 7-year-old. 0.18 months ago she and her husband came to my parents and asked if we'd finance an IVF. She came to the parents for her request. The way you threw in there appears to me like you felt you always had a say in the matter from the start. Basically a gift to one child and not the other, and that it was only fair that I be given a similar amount of money as what they would spend on my sister. How are you worried about your parents' finances in having to possibly pay again for IVF, yet your argument is to just gift you the money instead? If you actually cared about their finances, wouldn't you argue for them to just keep the money for themselves? I don't buy the spiel about you being worried about your parents' finances as reason why you stopped them from paying again. Even if you actually are, the argument you used about getting the money instead was gross and self-centered. For inserting yourself in a decision that isn't yours to make. It's your parents' money, so it's up to them to decide how they want to spend it. While I think the comparison to chemo is unfair, it is a medical procedure. So I think it's equally unfair to compare it to a cash gift you believe you're entitled to if your parents do fund the IVF. Also, a lot of posters here seem really uneducated at IVF. It often doesn't work the first time, but that doesn't mean it can't or won't work. Generally they can switch up your protocol as they learn more at how you respond to meds. Also, adoption isn't treatment for infertility. Adoption is expensive and also takes an emotional toll on both the parents and the adopted child. It's not expensive to foster, but people who are looking to grow their families permanently should not foster. The point of foster care is ultimately reunification, and if you're not doing it with that intent, you are in the wrong. Wow, I had to read way too far down this thread to find someone who actually understands IVF and infertility. Totally agree with you. Don't know why everyone's saying NTA. Because the way your parents spend their money is none of your business. She didn't ask you, she asked them, so you should mind your business. You're also tough for assuming you're owed the same amount of money. Your parents owe neither of you grown adults anything. You are an absolutely gigantic asshole. Your sister is right that it's none of your business, as is your mom, that it isn't your money. If she gets money I should get money too. It makes you sound like a Winnie entitled child. Grow up. Why are you so bothered by what your parents spend on her? Why not have a separate conversation with your parents? Mom das, I saw you were but uncomfortable when X asked for more money. Are you guys sure you can afford this? Honestly, I agree with some commenters. You're nosy and entitled. I was with you until you began talking about getting an equal amount of money. That derailed your argument by taking it from benevolent concern for your parents into self-interest. Even if it was just a ploy, you made them take sides. A better argument delivered alone with your parents would have been that they still have time to save, or that they might try the husband's parents. You can be right and still have it be not your place to say. Mildish, I can understand their desperation and I can understand your legitimate concerns. Your example about a gift to one child and not the other, and that it was only fair that I be given a similar amount of money as what they would spend on my sister, rather killed it. Although I understand how you tried to phrase it and try to make a comparison that would properly illustrate the situation. If those words came out of your mouth, you totally signaled yourself as tar. The sister is ridiculous as well. I know people that have these, and I know they are expensive, but they pay for a few rounds by themselves / through loans, then they ask for help. It's entitled to want to opt for such an optional thing, and not be financially affected at all. You start by saying that she came over to see if we would fund her IVF. You think it's your money. Your sister is allowed to ask, and your parents are allowed to decide what they do with their money. You don't factor